It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a guest who wears many hats. Eddie Generous. Welcome to the show, Eddie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So you are, man, I'm getting better at this introduction thing. So you're both an editor, a writer, and a podcaster. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Which of those is the most important hat?
I guess to start with, the most important is definitely writing. The editing and the editing and the art and the magazine and all that stuff kind of just came as I have this extra bit of time, and I could probably figure out how to function with a magazine and make some money off of it. Mm-hmm. And then from there came the podcast. It's like, I'm already reading all these people's books. I might as well talk to them about it. So that's kind of how it all fit together. But that's as far as the writing goes, it's mostly horror, and then the magazine is suspense, so that could be crime, even science fiction if it's dark enough. Primarily horror again, and that's Unnerving magazine. So
now with the title like Unnerving, you're not going to have exactly unicorns and rainbows in that.
Well, if the unicorn's deadly enough, man, I'm open to it.
Unicorns of Diomedes, they eat meat. Human meat.
Or anyway. You never know where that horn's going.
That's true too. Yeah. Anyway, so killer unicorns aside, it sounds like you guys you do a lot of interesting stuff, and you've got a book out. Is that true?
Yeah, in September it came out, Radio Run, from Severed Press. It's like a adventure horror. It's essentially I took kind of the mold of the movie The Running Man as opposed to the book, and pinning criminals against a system, and instead of goofy ass gladiators, you've got Sasquatch and giant ants and stuff like that.
Oh, that's amazing. I like it. So these guys are being hunted by giant monsters, more or less, or by these weird cryptids.
The idea is they get dropped off because they're a danger to society. So they're dropped off at the edge of society after the nuclear apocalypse. So there's the wasteland. So think, like Fallout games, stuff like that. These people, there's kind of a legend of a free zone in Alaska. So they're dropped off in the middle of Manitoba, and they've got vehicles and stuff at their disposal for portions of it, and some help from the TV channel that's kind of pushing them along, which in the story, because it's Canada, is the CBC that has drones following them so the public can gamble and stuff. So I really did borrow quite a bit from the Running Man movie as a shell, because it's, hey, the Hunger Games can borrow it. I can borrow it.
Hey, sure. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, it's the shades of the Hunger Games too, but that's obviously inspired by things like the Running Man and Battle Royale and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that's the gist of it. They're trying to get to Alaska. So, after the globe shifted, after all the nuclear bombs went off and all that jazz, the oceans are further up. So, you get into things like the megalodon and giant octopuses or octopi.
Oh, nice.
So it's a lot of it was a lot of me exploring all the monsters I could throw at these people.
So it's not one kind of monster. That's really cool. I enjoy that. I like a good monster as much as the next fan of books like yours, I'd imagine. I guess I'd say is I often like to have my monster. When I make a monster in a book, it's usually too smart, and that kind of kills it for me sometimes. Like they become more like an alien than just a killer animal or something.
Yeah. Well, these guys are just they're just some of them are territorial. Others are smart, because I was looking up about octopus, and they're they know if you've wronged them. They're out for revenge if you piss them off. It's like there's all these stories of sailors having the same creature kind of like trail them around after they've wronged this octopus. So it's kind of a fun thing to learn. However, I it's hard to kind of write in that because it's not basic knowledge without having that, that oracle character that's like, well, did you know the octopus is a vengeful creature? So you got to kind of take it both ways. But at the same point, anybody who's picking up a monster adventure book, I don't think they're as worried about every in and out as they are about awesome teeth and blood and gore and all the good stuff.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably true. I mean, but I didn't know octopi were vengeful creatures. That's interesting. But it also adds to the creep factor, especially with their ability to crawl on land and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. They're, man, stay out of the ocean, stay off the coast. I say that I live right on the
don't
coast.
Go when you're in here. I live in the middle of dry country, the Midwest of the United States. I am safe from octopus.
Yeah, you think so. You think so, man. They'll be like crawling up your toilet. You never know, man.
Oh, great. I'm not going to be able to. Anyway, so. Yeah. I mean, I scare easily. Maybe maybe I should have thought twice before having a horror writer on this show. Even when it was mostly just talking about, killer octopi and stuff so far. Now I'm just imagining one that has like a knife now for some reason lurking in the toilet. Like, I guess they got the beak anyway, right? So,
well, there's those.
Squid. No, do they have beaks? I don't even remember.
No, they have those.
They got the mouth
without without bone, and they can like squeeze through really tight spaces.
Right. It's the squids that have the big beak, like a bird or whatever, at the bottom.
Yeah, and then the very
creepy too.
The deep sea squid have teeth inside their suction cups, like the ones that are below where like almost Challenger deep kind of.
Okay, yeah.
Those guys.
Gosh, that's right out of the nightmare.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like you can't survive down there as it is, but if you somehow did figure out how to survive down there, you've got to deal
with its arms. Yeah.
All good fun.
Yes, that's what I call good fun. No, that sounds really cool, and I think your book sounds really. I mean, like sometimes a simple idea is best, right? You just got this, or an elaboration on an older idea in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Running Man. So as far as your writing goes, do you have a particular process that you approach writing with, or? I've experimented a lot. How about you?
It changes a bit, but mostly it's I have an idea that's lingering for a week or so, and I just maybe a bit longer. Then eventually it gets to the point where I can't deny it anymore, and I have a free afternoon, and then it just a few thousand words spills out, and then I have to put more stuff aside as the weeks go on to make sure I get enough of those words out as quickly. Because if I don't get them out quickly, sometimes I lose track of what I'm doing, and I don't know. I've never lost a novel that way, but it sometimes feels like some of the stories have gone sideways where they shouldn't have.
Yeah, I totally get that. I've had to abandon projects because I got too much doubt. Self-doubt about like, is this really where I wanted to go with this? And eventually just kind of ruins it. But I think it's, if the faster I write, the less trouble that is,
Yeah.
Getting it done in a week or a month, however long the book is, because some of my books are pretty short.
Well, that's the radio run. I used that shell of the Running Man because I knew, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and write this 60,000 words in 10 days. I got it in 9 days.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, but I was like breaking my ass, sitting like 13 hours a day some days. But it was a good experiment in pushing myself.
No, that's awesome.
The outcome.
Yeah, I actually tried to write a book in 4 days one time, a 60,000 word book, same kind of length. But I was using this guide from Death is No Obstacle, the Michael Moorcock interview book. So it's a fantasy kind of outline.
Okay.
This guy's I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a fantasy author from back in the day. Elric of Mel the Bone was his main character. But he'd write these fantasy books and he'd write them so fast. Apparently, allegedly with the influence of some drugs. But but anyway, he just he's like, yeah, you've used these techniques. You can easily get the book done in, for one, you write 15,000 words a day. You just do that for 4 days. Okay, then. And I thought, hey, I can write fast enough to physically do that. It didn't work out so well. It took like 30 days to write the book.
Yeah.
Because I just recently realized why that happened, or why his techniques didn't work for me. Is because my techniques are more like, okay, come with a good character, or a set of characters that I want to follow around, and then, just set them loose, and then we'll fill up the whole world that way.
Yeah. Well, I agree. The character should be first of everything, most times, or if not first, at least after you've started things, you better really follow in, because if the character's not good, then like your main character or characters, if they're not somebody that you want to follow around on this adventure, nobody gives a shit. Like,
absolutely,
when they're reading it.
Yeah, I think actually one of my more successful characters in this book that I'm about to release on, well, I guess by the time this episode drops, it'll be out. It's a science fiction novel called Stormfleet, and it's the first in my Pillar Universe series. But basically, I wrote some stuff about that character that's never going to see the light of day. I just wrote some scenes from that character's point of view before I started the book. And that really helped. Like, okay, these scenes aren't actually going to go in the book. And I guess they could have gone in the book if I wanted to. But I just wanted to get a hang on the character's voice, or get an idea of what not to do if that. I mean, it's like a pilot. I did a pilot for that book before I wrote the actual book. And I think it really worked. I mean, we'll see what people are saying about it by the time this episode comes out. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting situation to be in, where because I'm not actually a natural character writer. I'm pretty. It takes me a long time to get to know my characters, so starting early makes a lot of sense for me. Because, like you said, it's very important.
And one fun thing, I guess, if you get some kind of like a mass following for the series, you could use that pilot material you wrote and release like a special edition chapbook or something. Owen King did that when he wrote Double Feature, and it was really cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah, good to know. That's not a bad idea. I mean, there's always stuff that gets left on the cutting room floor, but most of the time for me, it's not whole scenes. It's just like, okay, that sentence was cool, but I can't use it here, kind of thing. But yeah, I guess in this case, I do have some whole scenes that didn't make it into the final book. Funny stuff. Good advice. I guess that's.
I guess you can thank Owen King rather than me. He's the one.
Yeah, I suppose. But I didn't know about that before you told me. So it's a team effort. So when you're I mean, you're juggling all this stuff. I mean, how often does the magazine come out?
It comes out quarterly.
Okay.
But so that includes, like, say I open submissions of short stories for a month. There's 500 stories coming my way, and I need to pick like 6 or 7.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why I've been trying to force novels into very short bursts of personal time, because then I can really focus. Because when you are editing other people's stuff, and I guess it's probably similar when you are like ghostwriting or something, is it you kind of start hanging out mentally in those worlds that you're working on that aren't yours, and it really kind of drains a bit of the creative juices. I find when I'm editing and things like that, it's mostly I can pop off a short story in an evening or something. I'll just have this really strong idea and just work through it. And if it's good, I keep it. If it's junk, I just junk it.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes a lot of sense. I really, when I was ghostwriting, I mean, as you alluded, it was it was during the period I was actually writing this series that I'm just starting to release with this first book. And so at one point, I mean, it took about a year to write the whole series, about 150,000 words. So they're pretty short books. There's 3 of them. And I originally wrote them all as one kind of giant book. But the reason it took so long is because I wrote a few other books in between. In between this, writing them, completing that story, because I got gigs that I needed to do, and those really did. They took all my brain power. So I for upwards of 4 weeks to 2 months, and I mean that was a few years ago. I think I could do it much quicker now. But that's the beauty of learning things, because with the with the ghostwriting, if I didn't get those books done, if I'd gotten those books done faster, it would have been much more effective as far as the funds and stuff. They would have been worth less time, but they would have provided me the same amount of money, so it would have been a better deal.
Yeah.
And yet, I mean. And they also slowed down the writing of the main book. But never mind. We don't need to go into that too much. On my book, I mean, I'm really happy with how it turned out, but it's kind of strange how, it's like, oh yeah, a victim of my own success is kind of what I'm getting at here. Getting those gigs to write other people's books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so
that's kind of what it is. You do the side things, make it all work out.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, as far as you've worked with other editors at Severed Press, right? Do they do a whole lot over there when you work on a book?
Well, they give you the one. It's mostly just from what I got. I don't know how. I can't say to every book that they accept. I think they get such an influx of books, really tailored to what they want, that they don't have to do a lot of the edits beyond just proofing a book, because it's like these are we accepted the ones we want, and the rest of them we just didn't bother.
That's probably smart of them. Saves them the work a little bit. They can put out more books that way.
Yeah. So, and I've worked with. It's funny. Recently, I sold a short story to an anthology, and I got back edits on it the same day I got edits back on another novel that I sold to a different publisher, which is called Camp Summit. It's coming out sometime in 2019. So I don't know. I can't give too much. So we'll just skip over that.
Yeah. So let's just slide that behind the curtain again.
Yeah. So I got the edits back for both on the same day, and the anthology publisher actually had more edits in my short story than the novel did, but the novel had some good edits. It was just like you run into some editors who are insane, and then you run into some that are like, okay, here's your style, and here's I understand what you're going for and all this stuff. And with short story stuff, I don't really get too worked up when the editor goes nuts with it, because that's just appearing in their anthology once. They're going to give me money. And then once I have the rights back, if I collect it in the future, I'm just going to go back to my original thing, buff it
that's cool.
The way I want. And, I'm not...
Author's preferred edition. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and the chances of everybody reading the anthology that will also, they're probably not going to pick up that anthology and be like, this is a kind of a funny or plain Jane or toned down or something story, and never read me again. Probably won't. I can't imagine it. It just is not that important.
Yeah, I've heard people describe writing in harsh terms, such as like it's a game of name that tune, and if the reader guesses the tune and you the exact tune you put in the book or whatever, they'll never read you again. I'm like, I don't think most writers are that harsh. Readers, I mean, are that harsh.
Oh my God, no. I've read books. I don't know. Maybe it's because of me that I read so much, but I've read books second books by people that are the public likes them, and I hated their book, but I'm like, well, maybe I'm just being unfair, or that was their dud or whatever. So I give them another try. It doesn't always happen, but it happens enough.
Yeah, what makes you give a book? What makes you give an author a second try or a series a second try if you didn't like the first book?
Well, if it's a series, I don't know if I'd give it a second try.
Okay, good to know.
But if it's just an author, it's really just people that pretty much book bloggers. If they're really digging it, and I usually agree with them on things, and I don't agree on something, or I know that I had a beef with a point that gets me where it doesn't. Nobody else seems to notice. Like say the timeline really teeters on this one pivotal thing that just is illogical to me, then the whole book's ruined. Like, yeah, the Big
No, I see
Bang
what you mean.
happened
I
because
get the idea. I mean, we don't have to name names or anything.
the one I'm thinking about most recently was a guy I've read a bunch of books. I've published his work before even, and he had a story that teetered on a guy suddenly getting his memory back.
Oh boy, that's like the biggest cliche of a writer's thing, right? Like,
so I was just like,
that's
no way,
a tenuous
man.
plot in the first place,
Yeah, so I will read him again. Like, I've liked some of his other stuff, and I like his short stuff. So, that one book, and everybody else seems to like it. I'm just like, well, are you reading the same thing I'm reading? Because this, I don't know.
Yeah, and even some really good writers can lay some really bad eggs. I mean, it's just how it happens.
Yeah,
I think this guy's
absolutely.
big enough. I don't mind mentioning him, but Orson Scott Card, I really do like some of his work. I mean, science fiction work especially, but like Ender's Game, that kind of stuff. But there are certain books, I'm not going to name them because there are certain books he's written that are like, I don't really think this makes any sense, or this really wasn't for me. It's that kind of thing. Like he writes lots of books that aren't for me. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
But a good chunk of them I really did enjoy,
In the case of Orson Scott Card, I've read half of one of his books, and I was planning on reading. I was like, well, I'll read Ender's Game because that's the one everybody likes. After I'd given up on this one that I'd started, I forget the title, but it was like way too heavy on Christian values, and
there's a lot of that in some of the stuff,
yeah. So I was like, I'm not really in the mood for that. I went through my time where I watched all the episodes of Family Matters and Fresh Prince and and got all my good family values in. And so now I'm into something a little deeper maybe, but
or monsters,
then I saw all of comments Orson Scott Card has made outside of his writing, and I'm just like, I'm good. I don't need to read anything.
Yeah, this is basically this. This is mostly stuff I learned before. I read his stuff mostly before I heard about his public persona, which I could do without that. Most authors I can generally do without the public persona, though.
Yeah, sometimes some authors are exactly who you want them to be.
That's actually a good point. I shouldn't have been so blanket with that, but yeah. Anyway, I just. This has gotten into kind of dangerous territory, so maybe let's steer us back to something. What would you recommend that you've been reading lately?
I'm like,
you don't have to name a whole bunch, obviously, because you read so many books.
Recently, the best. Well, I'm about a third of the way through Danse Macabre by Stephen King. It's a nonfiction, and I waited a long time to get it because I always want to get hardcovers of his books as opposed to paperbacks or anything like that. Yeah. And you don't bump into the nonfiction in hardcover as often. So I eventually got it here. My wife gave it to me for my birthday, I think. But before that, I'd read a really great take on a police procedural, and it was in England. So they didn't. It wasn't like it wasn't like Die Hard where it's like pew pew pew, and it was just like nobody's got guns, so they got to use their heads a lot more. But it was called Path of Needles, and it was by Alison Littlewood, and it was one cool thing. The main detective of the story is female, so it was a nice kind of a turn there. It's not always in a dude's head, and then the serial killer was building around classic versions of fairy tales, not the current versions, but the classic versions where everything's a bit scarier. So that was really cool. There was also this old book I picked up, a pocket paperback, because I'd seen the movie, and it was called Prophecy. And it was by David Seltzer. The movie has like Talia Shire in it. She played Adrian in Rocky.
Okay.
But the idea of this book was like, basically there's this bear, but it's not quite a bear. It's like, it was almost Inside Out. Like inside of the bear type monster is like, it's outside. It's like gooey and nasty. It's got big claws, and it's just roaming free from toxic waste. So I really dig stuff that's about, even back when it was written, I think it was like the late 70s, and it's written about the environment and what we're doing to it, and what's happening when we're not being careful. So that was a really good one too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's all good. That all sound like good stuff. But you said Danse Macabre. I want to go back to that for a second, because that's nonfiction.
Yeah, that's.
I really enjoy things nonfiction, and I didn't realize that was nonfiction.
Yeah, it's essentially the course while he was writing. I think it was Pet Sematary. He was teaching at a university, teaching a horror course, and this is essentially his course material. So it's
that's
pretty
awesome. Yeah, I gotta take a look at that.
Yeah. So
the reading list grows.
It covers a lot of stuff I hadn't really thought much about. So
that's really intriguing. I mean, I really love On Writing, so I might need to get my hands on Danse Macabre. Yes. Yeah,
On Writing is the I don't know. It's as far as even if you aren't a writer, that's one hell of an entertaining read.
Yeah, it's just fun. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of advice in there for writers. It's just a great way to get in somebody's head who's a great writer, basically. I mean, some of the stuff in there is fine, but it's good advice. But it's kind of general or zoomed out kind of advice,
Yeah, like I think it's like, okay, you decided to write yesterday. What should you do?
Yeah,
and exactly. It's like get your ass in gear is what it pretty much is what that book is about. And then it's like, here's what happened to me when I got hit by a van, and that whole second half of his struggles to get through after the accident and all that was really some fascinating stuff.
It's a powerful story. It's a powerful book, and it's a funny book. That's the thing I thought was really cool about it, honestly. Anyway, yeah, I could go on, is what I'm trying to say. I've listened to that audiobook a bunch of times. And,
okay.
Yeah, he read it himself, so it's even cooler if you ask me.
Yeah, I really like when he reads this stuff. I took a walk today, and I listened to The Raft, and he read The Raft on the audiobook version of Skeleton Crew. So I was listening to that while I was walking, and it's a fun one too.
Well, cool. So as for me, I mean, I'm still reading these two books, Lost by Matt Wallace. I've got that on my Kindle. And I think the other one might be on my Kindle too. Yeah, The Black Company by Glenn Cook. So those are both, one's urban fantasy, Lost urban fantasy about, it's the second book in his series, where it's about this like 5-star restaurant that basically caters to monsters, like goblins and demons and things. But cool. So they're serving a goblin wedding in this particular book, so it's kind of a weird situation. But it always is with this series. I mean, the first book was very strange too. So yeah, it's very funny, and there's a lot of surprising stuff in there, and Matt Wallace's style, I go on about it, but it's weird. I find it's extremely screenplay-ish, I guess is what I would say, which makes sense because he is a screenwriter. And I think it's like Chuck Wendig, if you've ever read any of his stuff. Yeah, they kind of similar in that way, and both of them have training as screenwriters, so it makes sense that I make that comparison at least there. And The Black Company I've talked about a bunch before. I'm just a slow reader. So yeah, that's that. I can highly recommend both of those so far, though. They're both excellent. All right, so Eddie, thanks for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Yeah.
Where can people find you and your stuff?
Well, okay. For personally, my website is jiffypopandhorror.com. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a kind of a fanatic, not a fanatic, an addict with Jiffy Pop. And then I'm on Twitter at GenerousEd. And then on the other side of things with Unnerving, I have unnervingmagazine.com. And you can link through. That has all the links to the podcast on iTunes and all that stuff to if you ever want to listen to the Unnerving podcast. And then beyond that, I think, there's Twitter at UnnervingMag. So that's about it. Nice.
Thanks for being on the show. And as for me, you can find sorry about that. As for me, you can find more of this show at mentalsettlerpublications.com. You can find my books, Amazon.com. I go by Tim Niederreiter on there. And if you can spell my name, that's Niederreiter with an I before E in the first syllable. So I before E, except after, especially after N. Anyway. So yeah, and I've just got. I probably just released Stormfleet. I definitely did. That should have come out on December 19th. And Fire Mage is still out there, along with the other 5 books in the Spells of the Curtain series. There's a whole ton of books on my author page, so take a look at that. And happy holidays, folks.